We don't know much so far, but what we do know is Black Ops 6 Zombies is trying to take things back old school. We've already got confirmation of round-based, a set crew, and gobblegums returning. But in this video, I want to have a big open discussion with all of you watching on my Black Ops 6 Zombies wish list, going over just some of the things that I hope happen in Black Ops 6 to make it as perfect a zombies game as we want it to be. I'd love to have as big of a discussion with you in the comment section as humanly possible on what you want to see and what you don't want to see in Black Ops 6 Zombies. If you agree with some of these points, brilliant, but if you don't, that's absolutely fine as well. Let's have some healthy conversation below in the comments. Let's jump straight into things, but consider this my initial wish list. I'm sure as the months go on, as we lead up to launch, there's going to be a lot more things that I'm suddenly going to realize that I want to see. But the first thing on my wish list is for the zombies maps to have depth and personality. The majority of the Cold War zombies maps felt very facility-esque, and there wasn't anything that had a unique sense of personality and atmosphere compared to older zombies games like Black Ops 1 to Black Ops 4. I think we're already off to a good start visually with the differences between Terminus and Liberty Falls, with Terminus being a very dark, gloomy map and Liberty Falls being complete polar opposite. When you look at the slate of maps, even from Black Ops 2, every single map is so different in so many ways that it's hard to even tell you're playing the same game with how different some of the maps are. And a lot of that comes down to the atmosphere in the map, the music, the ambience, and the visual detail. And I feel in older Black Ops Zombies games, Treyarch were not afraid to go completely crazy with the environments and not having them relate at all to the multiplayer and campaign. I'm just hoping we get a good list of maps that just have such unique atmospheres and environments that you're gonna keep going back to them for months and years to come. I think we can all agree that every Cold War Zombies map just felt like a semi-generic facility map where none of the maps really had anything that really stood out. I think the most unique map we got in Cold War was Mauer de Toten, but I'm really excited for them to just take it to the next level in Black Ops 6. My next point on my wish list is for Easter egg quests that are actually somewhat difficult. Now, when discussing this point, I think it's important to also put on the Treyarch glasses here and sort of look at what their perspective is on it, because I'm sure their data tells them that more people completed the Easter egg in D Machine than probably any other launch map in Zombies. Which, don't get me wrong, I think is a really positive thing, and I think in general, Easter egg quests should be easy enough that you can work it out on your own and not have to look up a guide for a step that involves super complex algebra as an example. But I would love to see Easter egg quests return to a Black Ops 3 level of difficulty. I think if we look at Black Ops 3, the majority of the quests on that game really hit a good balance between not being too difficult but also requiring a little bit of logical thinking in order to help solve. And the majority of the time as well, the steps really interweaved with cool gameplay moments as well, which I think makes an Easter egg quest far more interesting. But if we look at Black Ops 4, to me, that's where the difficulty level just went a bit too crazy. And obviously, Treyarch don't want to alienate that content being so difficult that players will just never experience it, because that's a real shame. But I don't think we're going to go back to the Black Ops 4 level of difficulty, but I'd love there to be a little bit more of a challenge. But please, let's not do the Revelation Bone step again, okay? Now, my next point here is one which we shouldn't have to really ask for, but we just got to make sure, and that is a combination of solo pause as well as a server pause when playing co-op matches. We've all heard the headlines that you need a persistent internet connection in order to play Black Ops 6. You can't play any portion of the game offline because this game is using a new texture streaming technology where the textures are constantly being streamed to your game through the internet to reduce the file size. Now, as long as this doesn't disrupt the game in any way to where there feels like some sort of latency or delay, then I'm all fine for it. I hope that doesn't cause any issues for a solo pause as well as a server pause in co-op. Now, starting with Cold War Zombies, we know that the game takes place on dedicated servers, and it should be no different on this game. But when we look at Vanguard Zombies, which was the first time Treyarch got to work with this new engine, it took a little while for them to integrate solo pause into the game. And with it being on dedicated servers, there was this weird lag that could happen where the game was still sort of running in the background even though you'd paused. I think that's just due to the complexities of the game running on a dedicated server and the game state being paused at that time, but it's still fetching data constantly from that dedicated server. And the part that sucked the most about it was you could only pause for collectively up to 2 hours in that game. So if you'd pause for longer than that, then you wouldn't be able to pause the game at any point beyond that. And I don't know if that was just a limitation on the dedicated servers at the time, something where they just didn't understand the engine enough, but that was over 3 years ago now. So that gives gives them plenty of time to have ironed out any of those issues, so hopefully that won't be the case anymore. And that ties in as well with server pause, where in Black Ops 4 and Cold War Zombies, the host of a private match and public match could pause the game for everyone. If you were going for high rounds and needed to take a break, then you could pause the game for everyone, and I really hope that returns and that feature also works as well as we hope it will. Because if this game is bringing back old school round-based zombies, you want to play all night with the boys, and going for high round runs but needing to pause the game to sleep and then continue on the next day, that's something that we've been able to do in the past, and hopefully with this game we'll be able to do it as well. And my next wish list is a little bit of a controversial one, because I don't think Treyarch are going to change this, but I want to spawn with a starting pistol in Black Ops 6. I don't want to spawn in with any weapon that I choose in a loadout system. Now, let's be honest, I don't think Treyarch are going to change this. We are going to still have the loadout system in Black Ops 6, but I want to offer an alternative to how we can have the best of both worlds here. So here's my alternative. You boot into Black Ops 6 Zombies for the first time and you spawn in with a starting pistol, just like the old days, happy days, but prior to the game, in the menus, you selected a weapon to be placed in the maps in a loadout locker. So when you spawn into the game, you have access to this loadout locker somewhere in the spawn room, and you can choose to swap the starting pistol to that loadout weapon if you want to. That way we truly get the best of both worlds, because I can understand the loadout system is fantastic if you are going to grind zombies to try and level up a weapon, try and get Dark Aether camo on it, and you don't want to try and get it out the mystery box. That makes a ton of sense. But what I think we all enjoyed spawning in with a starting pistol is that the power curve rewarded you for having a really low damage weapon at the start of the game, and using that really weak weapon, you earned the points to be able to get yourself a slightly better weapon, and then using that weapon, you then use that to work up to getting an even better weapon. Whilst there are definitely some positives to the loadout system, I think one of the biggest negatives from Cold War Zombies is that the loadout system made the mystery box absolutely pointless. If I could choose what weapon I want the moment I spawn into the map, I don't need to hit the mystery box to try and get it. And also, I'm just going to keep the weapon I spawn in with for the entire game, so what's the point in hitting the box? It's not even a case that you hit the box to try and get monkey bombs or the special grenades of the map anymore, because you can just craft them at the buildable bench. So it really does feel like the mystery box has become redundant, and I don't know if Treyarch have realized that in Cold War, but I kind of miss having to rely on the mystery box, and especially when you tie in map specific weapons as well. And we're not talking just wonder weapons, but other weapons, like I guess on Zetsabo you've got the MX Garand as well as the Marshall 16s, which are exclusive just to that map. It just adds a little bit of extra nuance to making a map unique. The next thing on my wish list is a rework of the salvage system, because we already know it is returning. Within the 10-second gameplay, you can see both a green and blue salvage drop on the stairs, so we know it's returning. And I know some of you watching the video straight up just don't want to see salvage return in Black Ops 6, and I kind of feel you on that, but at the same time, we know it's coming, so there's no point wishing it wasn't. Let's talk about how Treyarch can improve the salvage system. And currently in Cold War, teammates can just straight up steal salvage you've earned from killing zombies, and I don't think that's fair. I feel like every player should have their own loot pool. Like if we look at games like Borderlands, for example, if there are items dropped that you have earned, then your friends can't become loot goblins. It's specifically for you, and I feel like every player in a game of zombies should have their own loot pool. Better still, it should work just like the point system in zombies, where you don't have to go over and pick it up off the ground. It's just automatically added to your stash like we have with points at the moment. So it's just a more automatic system, and you probably build up and have a lot more salvage that way, and players would use it a lot more because they just naturally get it. My next point kind of goes hand in hand, because with that salvage you are going to a crafting table, and we've heard from leaks that the crafting table system is going to return, and I feel like we need some quality of life changes to those menus, so you're not shifting through multiple screens to get to what you want. Unless you've thrown a monkey or a decoy grenade, you feel like you are literally at any moment going to die from zombies hitting you whilst you're using that table. Don't get me wrong, that adds a lot of danger to using it, which I think is really good, but maybe there should be a period of like maybe 3 to 5 seconds, maybe once a round, where you are invulnerable to zombies, where they can't disturb you for just a moment. Some of you might agree with that, some of you might disagree and think it shouldn't be changed, but I feel like there has to be some quality of life change to the menus so it's a little bit more intuitive. And that leads on as well to Pack-a-Punch, where you have to go through a menu system as well as the crafting table to use it, and I think we just need to get rid of that in Black Ops 6. We want the authentic feel of putting your weapon in the machine. And for that brief 5 seconds, you are a little bit vulnerable because you don't have your weapon anymore. I don't know why that necessarily had to change in Cold War, and I think some leakers have already confirmed that the animation of cracking your knuckles is in Black Ops 6, so it seems like that's returning, which is really good news. Now, my next point on the wish list is to just make high rounds in the game a little bit more difficult. Now, don't get me wrong, I feel Black Ops Cold War actually got a balance where a lot more players were achieving high rounds than we'd ever seen before, which is obviously a positive thing and great for the game. But I guess we are such a small percentage of players that, you know, see this sort of thing and think we want a little bit more of a challenge. So I think it's a really difficult balancing act for Treyarch, because I'd argue that they're probably really happy with how they managed high rounds in Cold War, seeing more people achieve them than ever before. But then I think that boils down to a discussion as what is a high round anymore, because back in the old days where, you know, getting to round 100 seemed like an incredible feat, now that's pretty normal. So is that just the general COD community raising the bar on what they consider to be a good high round, or is it because the game has gotten way too easy compared to before? I don't really know. I do think if we look back at older games like Black Ops 1, majority of the high rounds involved you having to use traps. Like if you didn't use traps, you weren't going to get to a high round, and I don't think that is fun at all in terms of gameplay. So I'm glad that we aren't in that era of trap usage anymore. Then we look at what Cold War did to try and make high rounds harder, and obviously round 55 onwards we get the super sprinters, and you have to consider if that did make the game harder. Was it fun that the zombies were all super sprinters? Was it not fun? I honestly don't know right now what I would suggest to make the game harder, but I do think Treyarch needs to do something just to make the high rounds feel a little bit more difficult, and in that case a little bit more rewarding for getting to the high rounds. Now, my next wishlist point is an interesting one because I can see the literal pros and cons to both of them, and also why Treyarch has changed this over the years, but I think a quality of life change to the point system might be a good thing in Black Ops 6. Now, I know a lot of you watching do not like what Treyarch did with the point system in Black Ops Cold War, but the one positive is that it does not slow down the start of the game. A lot of people felt that at the start of zombies games it was just a bit too slow with the way that you were maximizing points by shooting in the leg and then knifing or going for headshots, etc. So Treyarch just wanted to speed that up a little bit, and in some ways I can definitely appreciate that. But I think the beauty of the old point system is that it really took a long time for people to master and maximize it, but if you knew it was there, you were able to take advantage of it and be able to, you know, come up with strategies to get as many points as possible, maximize the ammo you had with that starting weapon. Now, I don't think Treyarch will ever revert back to the old point system, but I do think that the Black Ops 4 point system was a pretty much perfect blend of old and new, where you got a specific amount of points for each kill, but you got bonus points for getting headshots or getting melee kills. Now, again, do I think this is a better system than the old point system? I don't personally think so, but I don't think it's going to change, so I'd rather just improve what we know we're probably going to get. Now, my next point is on movement. Now, we know that Black Ops 6 is coming with the new Omni movement system, which is going to be huge, game-changing in fact, in all modes. But one of the things that I love the most about Black Ops 3 Zombies was the Black Ops 3 slide. And I mean, all of you guys hopefully watching will agree that sliding around the map just felt so smooth. It was so fun to do. Every Black Ops game after it, you can just really notice its absence. Now, I'm fairly confident Black Ops 6 does have a slide, but it would be incredible if it was anywhere close to the Black Ops 3 slide. Even if it was a zombies exclusive movement set that wasn't something you saw in multiplayer and campaign and Warzone, that would be absolutely insane, but that's probably wishful thinking. What is slightly less wishful thinking is being able to adjust the HUD and UI just as much as shown in multiplayer. Now, it's presumed that we'll be able to do that as well in zombies, but I don't want to assume and then be disappointed, so I'm putting it here on the wish list, as being able to customize your HUD in zombies would be absolutely incredible. Cold War introduced a lot of things which some people at first did not like but grew used to, such as the zombies health bars, the XP pop-ups for each elimination, but being able to control if that's on screen or not, I think would be absolutely massive, because then it caters to the very best of both worlds. If players like that new stuff, they can keep it on, but if they want a bit more of that old school zombies feel, then they can turn it off. I think I would keep the health bars on personally, because it's really useful to see, especially in boss fights, but I do think the XP pop-ups for eliminations could be removed, and if we can customize and change that, that would be absolutely massive. But if we look back at games like Black Ops 2, every single zombies map had its own unique HUD that fit with the theme of the zombies map. Now, I don't think we'll get that again, but just seeing that level of care and attention to zombies, even all the way back then, is really cool. And then Black Ops 3 was just the cleanest HUD that we've had yet. If we can adjust the HUD and UI, that would be insane. Another thing on my wish list, which I think Cold War Zombies was incredibly disappointing in, was the lack of side Easter eggs. And I really want Black Ops 6 to have side Easter eggs that are Black Ops 3 level of depth and reward. I'd love to test you, the viewer, right now if you remember any Cold War Zombie side Easter eggs that were useful and memorable, because I feel like you're going to struggle to find any. Side Easter eggs weren't too big until Black Ops 3, where I just felt there was the perfect blend of side Easter eggs that were both useful and also pretty fun. Some of the Easter eggs in Cold War Zombies, such as upgrading the monkey bombs and even the free jump pads on Firebase Z, were absolutely pointless additions, which I feel bad for saying, because obviously they put some effort into creating these side Easter eggs, but man, I think it's just missing a lot of the charm and the usefulness of side Easter eggs from prior games. So funny talking about this, because I think Cold War also probably had one of the best side Easter eggs ever with the coffin dance in D Machine, but outside of that and the Perkaholic Slenderman Easter egg on Forsaken, which admittedly was really up there in terms of the quality of side Easter eggs that we expected from that game, there's only a fraction of the amount of side Easter eggs that we got in games like Black Ops 4 Zombies, which you could argue was a bit too ridiculous. And whilst it's cool that secrets remained hidden for so many years, at the end of the day, you want there to be side Easter eggs that are gonna be really useful, really cool, and also aren't gonna be ridiculously hard to find. And I really hope we get a good balance of that in Black Ops 6. Next on my wish list is a quality of life change to the exfil system. Now, leakers have confirmed that the exfil system is coming back in Black Ops 6 Zombies, and again, if this is a sequel to Cold War, I can't really be too surprised. It's a pretty cool addition to the game, but I feel like it needs to be a little bit more interesting, and we could make it a little bit more dynamic on a per map basis. An example could be on the Terminus map, instead of a helicopter coming to pick us up and exfil, it's a little bit more map specific, where we have something like a boat that's suddenly docked on the edge of the map, and we need to survive the onslaught and make our way to that specific part of the map in order to board the boat and then escape. It's a really small thing, but I think it would add a lot in just making a map feel a bit more unique and a bit more special. I guess when you compare this to stuff like Mob of the Dead and flying on the plane to escape, just that sort of thing that just mixes it up, I think would be really cool. The next thing on my wish list is the return of big, exciting, difficult boss fights. Cold War Zombies had a very strange trajectory when it came to boss fights, because the launch map didn't even have one. Firebase C was probably the easiest boss fight in all of Zombies history, but then we got Outbreak's Easter egg with that boss fight, which is one of the most intense Treyarch boss fights that they've ever created. Mauer de Toten's boss fight was pretty good, but then Forsaken's was just a bit of a letdown. Considering Treyarch were riding high off the back of Black Ops 4 Zombies, which had some of the best boss fights in all of Zombies history. I'm looking at Voyage of Despair's boss fight, the 9 boss fight, just every Chaos map had a really good boss fight, and Black Ops 3 obviously pioneered boss fights with arguably one of the most perfect boss fights with the introduction of them in Der Eisendrache. With us getting 2 round-based maps on launch and the probability of us getting 4 DLC maps, that means we got 6 Easter eggs with 6 potential boss fights. And I think Treyarch hit it out of the park with the Outbreak boss fight, where it felt like a real challenge, where it really rewarded you replaying it to get better, to learn it, so that you could actually beat it. Because when that first came out, that boss fight was actually really tough. They nerfed it quite a few times, but that shows they were onto really good boss fight design near the end of Cold War. So if they can take that and improve it to be super consistent across all of the round-based maps, then I think we're going to have a really good set of boss fights on our hands. The final point I have on my wish list is an emphasis on importance on the map layout. Now, when I say this, I mean specifically when it comes to the location of certain perk machines, as well as the location of the Pack-a-Punch machine. Because if we look at the first two Cold War Zombies maps as an example, one of the first crutch perks, Juggernog, you can get within 2 door buys. Now, usually Juggernog is one of those perks which is going to be hidden fairly well on the map. That is not going to be the first thing you'll come across. And in prior games, Treyarch purposely did this because they knew that it's going to be the first perk you buy, so they want to make you work towards getting that perk. But in D Machine, it's just straight up there, and you could have Juggernog within a matter of a few rounds, which is not something you typically would have in prior games. And when we look at the Pack-a-Punch machine as well, in Firebase Z, it's literally there within the spawn room itself, so it doesn't feel like too much of a challenge or a real journey to get you to the Pack-a-Punch machine, where in prior games, take Zetsubo no Shima, Gorod Krovi, Shadows of Evil, just as 3 examples, there is a majority of map exploration that you need to do in order to get Pack-a-Punch. And of course, we've mentioned this many times throughout the video, but of course there is a balancing act for Treyarch to have here, where it's a balance of being accessible to a lot of players, whilst also not just being straight up given to you. Now again, an argument could be made if Pack-a-Punch is so difficult that you have to look up a YouTube tutorial in order to work out how to do it. So I don't necessarily think we need to go back to that, but I think there needs to be at least something where the map takes you on a pretty epic journey in order to get to the Pack-a-Punch. Like, look at Gorod Krovi, you fly on a dragon to get to Pack-a-Punch. That is an amazing set piece. In Cold War, it doesn't feel anywhere near as special unlocking Pack-a-Punch and getting some of these crutch perks so early on into the map. I feel on a fundamental level, we can all agree that Pack-a-Punch should be the last thing you get to on the map, and Juggernog should also be a perk that you won't come across straight away when opening up the map. Like I said, this is just my initial wish list. I'm sure by the time I post this video, you're watching it right now, there is going to be more things that I'm going to have thought of that I hadn't before. But I'd like to think that Treyarch is going to watch this video and pay attention to the feedback from you guys in the comments below. So if there's any wish list items that I didn't mention that you want to see in Black Ops 6, leave it in the comments below, because hopefully someone at Treyarch will be watching that can take that feedback on board to make Black Ops 6 Zombies the best game it possibly can be, whilst also delivering for as many different types of players as humanly possible. Because at the end of the day, we want as many people playing zombies as possible, because that's only a positive benefit for the ecosystem of COD Zombies as a whole.